Hey guys, in this video I want to talk to you about the exact steps that you'll go through when building a website so you know what to expect. The first step, before we even start to design anything, you may have already completed, but it's a critical step, is to have your brand strategy figured out. So a website's a piece of communication, and any kind of communication that you're going to do, you want to know who you're sending it to, what you're offering, what it is that makes you different, and how do you express that. So typically this would have been done with a branding agency when you first started your company, or if not, you may be going through it for the first time with your website developer. But you really need to understand that. Who are we communicating to? And it could be several different audiences. What are we saying to them? And we need to make sure that that's different than what others are saying, and that it's actually something compelling, and be able to articulate that with words, but also visually. And typically there's some kind of a brand style guide or something that's going to set that up. That's step number one when building a website. Step number two is to start to pull together your content. If you're lucky or you've already built a website in the past, maybe you've got some existing content that you can use as a starting point to pull from. Otherwise, or if you're overhauling that, you're going to be producing new content, and that's going to be quite the undertaking. Content can be produced text, which is done typically by the web firm interviewing you, interviewing others in your company, and trying to get that information out of you, where they can then go and actually write it. If you fancy yourself a writer and you're pretty confident and have the time for it, you may choose to furnish that content yourself. You also need to pull together any photos or any videos that are going to go on the website. That could mean hiring a photographer. Again, the web agency can help with this, or a videographer, or acquiring those assets yourself. And again, depending on what you're doing, that can be quite the undertaking. You may also want to get some illustrations. If your product or service is best described with some kind of an infographic or an illustration of some sort, that's additional pieces of content that are going to need to be figured out. The third step after content is your visual design. This is where we really start to create what the site's going to look like. It's going to be heavily informed by the brand style guide that you've created. We're going to look at other inspiration sources, other websites that you maybe like, and try to incorporate elements of that. We're going to do this in two phases. The first phase is going to be what we call the UX, the user experience, which has nothing to do with pretty graphics yet at this point, and has everything to do with kind of like a blueprint for a house. It's showing how the pages are going to be laid out, how we expect users to flow through the site, so on and so forth. Then once we've got that kind of skeleton figured out and built out, we're going to go ahead and apply the visual styles that are, again, informed by the brand, and start to load the content in to see what it's going to look like. In the visual design phase, it's not necessary to design every single page of the site. What we're going to do is design the most critical pages of the site, show them to you, go through a round or two of revisions till we get them right, and then they'll be ready for development. This is a critical step in the process, because whatever ends up getting developed is going to look exactly like the graphics do, and so it needs to be pixel perfect, and this is an opportunity for you to go through it with a fine-tooth comb and say, yes, these are exactly the designs that I want. I understand that it's going to be nearly impossible to change this after it's been coded. The fourth step of the process is, of course, development. So now that we have finalized graphic design files, we're going to take and turn them into machine-readable code that can be distributed over the internet and viewed in people's web browsers. So what we do is we take those finalized designs and we start to slice them, is what we call it, where we convert them into HTML, CSS, JavaScript files, and then we add in any back-end functionality that makes those things actually work. This is a pretty laborious process on our end, but there's very little that the client needs to do at this point. It usually just takes a handful of weeks while we build out those pages and go through our own internal round of QA to make sure that they look right. When we're doing internal QA, we're looking at Macs and PCs, we're looking at the code on smartphones and on tablets, on desktop machines, we're looking in Chrome and Safari and Internet Explorer and Edge to make sure that that code that's been created looks and works the way it's supposed to in all those different environments. Step number 5 of the website development process is client QA. So at this point, we feel pretty good about where things are at, and we're going to send it over to you and give you a link to where you can start to click through and experience the site. You may want to involve others on your team, probably not too many, or you'll get too many opinions. But this is going to be in a staging environment. It's not yet live to the public internet. It's just a place where you can go and start to experience the site. Similar to when you buy a new house and you're going through a final walkthrough, you're flagging all of the things, and you end up making a pretty long list, 20, 30, 50 items that then need to be fixed before the site can go live. And that is, of course, the last and final step of the process, the launch. When a launch happens, if you have an existing site, we're going to freeze edits on that site and pull anything off of it that needs to go into the new site. Then we're going to archive the old site so that we don't lose it, and we're going to deploy the new site. This process takes typically less than an hour. There should be no downtime on the site for the users who are experiencing it in most cases. Typically, as part of that launch process, we're going to do a final round of QA to make sure everything that was caught during the client QA was caught. We're going to do some stress testing to throw a bunch of traffic at the site and make sure that it doesn't go down. And we're going to be monitoring it in the days and weeks following launch to make sure there's no missing pages, broken links, server slowness, things like that. So at this point, congratulations, your new site is live and visible to the world. To understand what post-launch maintenance looks like, I encourage you to watch our video on how to care for my website after launch. In the meantime, I'd love to hear your thoughts, either by reaching out or by adding them in the comment section below.